YouTube poops need no introduction. Chances are, if you're watching this channel, then you already know what a YouTube poop is. But for those of you who don't know and just clicked on the video because of the funny red plumber on the thumbnail, to keep it basic, a YouTube poop, or abbreviated to YTP, is a form of video that takes pre-existing media, say SpongeBob or the Mario and Zelda CDI games, and distorts them into something completely different than what it once was. Now you might be thinking that there is no way something as simple, something as stupid as making your favorite cartoon character swear could warrant something like an iceberg. But oh boy, would you be wrong. I mean, if Arthur can have an iceberg, then so can something like YTP. I'm assuming by now you all know what an iceberg chart is, so I'm not even gonna bother explaining it and just cut right to the goods. So without further ado, grab some Octoroks, get ready to defeat your favorite bowl of spaghetti as we go through the YouTube poop Iceberg. CDI games. The Legend of Zelda and Mario CDI games are synonymous with the world of YTP. Made in the mid-90s after a deal with Philips and Nintendo to make its CD add-on to the SNES fell through, the games have been critically panned by most Nintendo or just video game fans in general, with the cutscenes of these games being some of the most infamous parts of the games, simply because of how bizarre they are when compared to other pieces of Mario and Zelda media. Well, aside of the Deke cartoons. And those Mario Edutainment games. And some other commercials. But whatever. Once the YTP community got a hold of these cutscenes, they soon became a mainstay within the world of YTP. Most likely due in part to just how bizarre they are. And to this day, you can still see people do stuff with these cutscenes, and especially with certain characters, such as Morshu. Morshu is a character from the Faces of Evil game that just pops in and goes,
lamp oil, rope, bombs, you want it?
You know the rest. Now, despite this very brief appearance, he has become synonymous with not just YTP culture, but with meme culture as well. The Morshu memes can range from this creature someone made, to cosplays, or even to people who have managed to sentence mix the two lines he had in the game to make him sing various songs, such as Space Odyssey by David Bowie, or Gangster's Paradise by Coolio. Spidinner. Ooh boy, this is an oldie but a goodie.
Spidinner is a collection of sound bites typically used in YTPs, especially older YTPs. Some of the more famous ones include the famous dinner line, or I hope she made lots of spaghetti, or all toast is toast toast, or that's Mama Luigi to you, Mario, or who can forget my favorite, Volvic Revive. God, I'm such a dork. These used to actually be hated by the majority of the community due to how lazy they can come off as.
I'll fix it myself!
Seems like we have a gay Luigi here.
Heck, I remember back in 2016 when I first started making YTPs, a common rule in a lot of YTP collabs were no Spidinner jokes, or they were limiting it to like 3 Spidinner jokes. Since then, it seems that a lot of people have calmed down on the Spidinner hate, and now simply saying lots of spaghetti is a simple way to get a laugh. YTP Tennis. YTP Tennis is a game that is played between at least 2 people, but often can be more, in which one person makes a YTP and then someone makes a YTP of the YTP, and that goes on for various rounds. It could be 6 rounds, it could be 10 rounds, it could be 20 rounds, and I believe I've even seen 1 or 2 tennises that go upwards of 50 rounds. The first round I can find can be traced back to 2007 between users Conrad Slater and Miscellaneous 10. And these have been going strong ever since then. Some of my personal favorites being the Peanut Butter Gamer Tennis by Jimmy Davis and NP Carlson, or this Robotnik-themed tennis by I Teach Vader and Commander Guo. YTP-MV. A YTP-MV is debatably more popular than a YTP itself. This is when you take a soundbite of a character and make them sing a song. There are various kinds of YTP-MVs, like, as I said before, making a character sing the song through pitch shifting, various sound bites, more commonly like them screaming or singing a note, because that makes sense. Or you could sentence mix a character to sing the lyrics of a song, like what I do most of the time. Although my personal favorite are the ones that make completely original songs, like with the likes of most Robotnik YTP-MVs. From my research, the first YTPMV was Stay Here While I Bash Koopa Football Players by Mr. Simon, who, just a heads up, you were gonna hear a few more times in the Iceberg.
No!
Now, I'm not the most knowledgeable of the YTPMV community, considering my YTPMV skills are not the best, so I'll just move on. Sus and Jaj. This kind of goes without saying. Sus is when someone takes a clip of a character and reverses it, and Jaj is very much the same, and there are also like a million different variations of this. There's Ha, there's Ho, there's...
My new super special sauce.
Like Spit Dinner, this was a constantly hated joke within YTPs, with people putting rules against it in collabs, and it even got to the point where jokes hating on Sus became more commonplace than Sus jokes themselves. Nowadays, people aren't really up in arms about it, so there's that. I mean, also nowadays, there's that whole Among Us thing, but keeping that out. Deke Mario cartoons. Much like the Zelda CDI games, the series of 3 Mario cartoons produced by Deke in the late 80s and early 90s are infamous when it comes to YTP.
Everyone's learned that it's not a person's color that counts, it's the kind of person they are inside.
Think they'll ever learn that lesson in the real world?
Yeah, when humans get as smart as mushrooms.
Of course, we have the Super Mario World cartoon with its Mama Luigi's and its Ooktars, but there is also stuff like the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which has Captain Lou and Danny Wells' performance as the brothers being nothing less than legendary.
Piece of spaghetti on your overalls.
And we also have the Mario 3 cartoon, which conveniently holds our next topic, He's Hot on Our Tail. He's Hot on Our Tail is a YTP of an episode of the Adventures of Mario 3 cartoon titled Recycled Koopas. This was created by Super Yoshi in 2004, thus making this the first YTP ever made, quote unquote. This YTP is beloved by a majority of the community because of what it created, that being YTP. In fact, a few years back, user Poop TV actually made a collab centered around the episode as a way to celebrate the 15th anniversary of YTP. Emplemon. Emplemon is one of the most popular YTPers in the community. He was primarily known for a series of Pixar YTPs, most popularly his Frying Nemo series of videos, but he also pooped movies such as The Incredibles and Cars. He also pooped sources like SpongeBob and The Simpsons. He's also one of the most controversial figures as well for the same reason, with people calling him overrated. Nowadays, he's retired from YTPs, and YTP-related videos, with an exception of like 2 or 3, aren't even available on his channel due to him getting rid of all of them in summer 2021. But they're pretty easy to find considering he's Emplemon. He's moved on to more video essay-heavy videos, and they're pretty good. I'd highly recommend checking them out. Dr. Robotnik. One of the most iconic YTP characters and one of my personal favorite sources in YTPs is Dr. Robotnik, specifically his depiction in the 1993 cartoon Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which was also done by Deke, funnily enough. Originating in 2006 with the poop Robotnik and Sonic Sodomy Hour by Super Yoshi, Robotnik poops in general are kind of just a subgenre of YTP within themselves, with videos by the likes of Boogity Boo, Steg Blob, and the Chairman 45 being beloved by the community, and even some of the more recent Robotnik poops by people like I Teach Vader being beloved by almost everyone.
Sonic is my bitch.
Daddy.
Promotion.
You're spoiling my victory party! You're victorying my spoiling party!
The magical stabilizers of steel!
Aside from the YTPs themselves, a lot of his quotes have often been referenced in YTPs, such as the iconic Pingus line, or simply him going NO! Or needless to say, YTP wouldn't be the same without animation's sexiest fat man.
I'm loaded!
Where there's smoke, they pinch back. This refers to the slogan of YTP. This originates from 2 quotes of Mario in Hotel Mario.
Be careful. When you pinch Wendy's pennies, they pinch back. This is it, Luigi. Remember, where there's smoke, there's fire.
And it is commonly used in YTPs everywhere. This, along with the equally iconic YouTube is where the poop is intro, are staples of 2009 era YTPs. Disney YTPs. Like every other piece of media, Disney has a sort of monopoly on YTPs, with some of the most popular YTPs being Disney poops. Now, I couldn't find a de facto first Disney poop, but some of the first ones I personally remember are the likes of Toys Gone Wild by Boogity Boo, dating back to 2007. One of my personal favorites, Jeannie Has Allergies by Weld, released in 2008. And of course, the onslaught of Gaston poops from people like Mr. Simon, Mark3611, and the classic Gaston's Amazingly Sexy Tri-Organizer Nonsense, which was a collab between poopers Dual Screen 77, Billy Morshoe, and Jake Steele, released in 2009. Of course, people probably know series like Cold, a series of frozen poops by Number 1, and the aforementioned Frying Nemo poops by Emp Lemon. Spingebill. Spingebill is a common name for SpongeBob YTPs. Like Disney, SpongeBob has dominated the YTP game, with a lot of Spingebill poops becoming legendary, and Spingebill poopers becoming gods amongst the community.
It's tough to be a god, but if you get the people's nod.
Some of the more popular Spingebill poops are things like The Sky Had a Ouija, which is one of the most popular YTPs ever, and Jarlebo's Spinge Binge Me Millionth Dollar. Now, originally I was gonna just leave it at that and have those two poops have their own entries, but to save time, I figured I'd just mention them here. Spinge Binge Me Millionth Dollar is an insane collection of mainly sex jokes, cobbled together in a way only someone like Jarlebo can do, along with an infamous meme about the title screen of the YTP, in which, for the sake of everything, I'm not showing here. And The Sky Had a Ouija is, according to the comment section of the video, something that defined a generation. And like I said before, it is one of the most viewed YTPs on the site, sitting with a nice 18 million views. And all of that is in part 2.
Mario character again, and a Pokemon item, and edgy bobbing explosion humor for guys.
Skooks. Skooks is another iconic YTP, or series of YTPs. Skooks is a series of 5 Scooby-Doo YTPs made by Orpheus for the Win in 2011. This series is praised by myriads of people for how impressive the editing is, especially for the time. I mean, a lot of the stuff even holds up to today's standards. It helps that it has a rather surrealist pacing and some of the most quotable lines in YTP history, such as the famous "Watch me swoosh right in" line. And do I even need to mention the caveman gag?
Am I glad he's frozen in there and that we're out here and that he's the sheriff and that we're frozen out here and that we're in there and I just remembered we're out here.
These YTPs are still some of the best YTPs in YTP history, and I always find a way to laugh in a new way I haven't before. Poopisms. Poopisms are just the common strategies and ways of editing used by YTPers. Most commonly used are as follows. The stutter loop, where you take a clip of a character and loop it. Pitch shifting, in which you make a character's voice more high-pitched or low-pitched. Reversing, where you take a clip of a character and simply reverse it. Distortion, where you boost the audio to uncomfortable degrees. It's actually called something else, but I'm personally not comfortable with saying the second half of the poopism, so let's move on. And my personal favorite, sentence mixing, where you take the words a character says and rearrange them so they say something completely nonsensical. There are countless other poopisms out there, but naming them would warrant a book, so let's move on. Crowbo Productions. Crowbo is a pooper that dates back all the way to 2008 and is one of the most beloved people from both the community and outside the community. Some of his more prolific works include Friendship is Gick, a trilogy of MLP YTPs, Steven's Universe, a trilogy of Steven Universe YTPs, and probably most famous, Fesh Prince, which was a duology of Fresh Prince YTPs. Beyond that, he has also been quite notable for 2 King of the Hill YTPs and a Grinch YTP that was apparently viewed by Markiplier once, which conveniently leads to our next topic, YTP and mainstream internet. Especially as of now, a lot of DNA of YTPs have been amplified in internet humor, with a lot of modern day humor just being bizarre. And of course, with the popularity of Morshoe and Michael Rosen, that helps as well. Beyond that, several YTPs have been well loved within meme communities. There was the aforementioned Sky Had a Ouija, which was apparently mentioned in a textbook of some kind, if the description of the YTP is anything to go by. But there are also a vast majority of Rick Astley YTPs that have garnered millions of views. I actually remember a friend of mine that had no idea what a YTP even was showed me Good Ol' PU by the Citizen Brain. And I feel like I don't even need to go into depth about the likes of Bosch or Flying Kitty. YTP Origins. Wrapping up the top layer, I feel like it would be fitting to talk about the origins of YTP. Like I said in the He's Hot in Our Tail entry, in December of 2004, Super Yoshi uploaded the first YTP using an episode of the Mario 3 cartoon, originally going under the name The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 Remixed. He uploaded it to Sheezy Art, and it was met with a mixed to positive reception. 2 years later, he would start up a channel where he would post what is regarded as the first YTP uploaded to YouTube, being another one I mentioned previously, Robotnik and Sonic Sodomy Hour. And the rest is history, with people like Walrus Guy, Deeper Cut, and Mr. Simon showing up and causing it to just explode in popularity. Also, apparently he's 100 Tales on IMDb. Michael Rosen. Michael Rosen is a British poet who published around 140 books as of 2022, and is still up and kicking. His popularity in YTP began in 2009 when Pooper Insector uploaded the video titled YouTube Poop Recites a Bedtime Story for the Kids.
I say something, and Andrew does the opposite. You watch. Straight. What? That's right, Andrew. I'm the game.
Which, despite what you may think, didn't use the poem videos that you see in most Rosen poops. It actually used a segment Rosen did for the BBC series CBeebies Bedtime Hour, specifically his reading of The Opposite by Tom McRae. Eventually, this would lead to his poem videos being discovered by various users, such as Cantanasol and CS188. To this day, Rosen is still a prominent figure in the YTP community. Behind the Meme video. On January 18th, 2017, user Behind the Meme uploaded a video trying to explain YTP and its origin. The video was met with a terrible reception, with people saying he did nothing more than look up a Behind the Meme description and did little to no additional research on the topic. Most prominent was when Emplemon uploaded a half-hour video completely tearing the video apart. Personally, I can get past the first minute of the video. YTP tutorials. People have always been curious on how to make YTPs, and while the simple answer is to just pirate Vegas and experiment, this hasn't stopped people from making basic tutorials on the tips and tricks one needs to make YTPs. Most famously, there is Mobro Studios' video, where it goes into detail on each poopism and how to do it, along with some do's and don'ts, and Big Eye Luigi's series of tutorials, which basically teaches the same thing. If you're wanting to learn how to make SpongeBob swear, then I'd highly recommend checking these out. They actually helped me a lot when I was first starting up. Fads. Throughout the years, there have been several fads within the YTP community. Some of the earliest ones I can remember being the This Video Contains series of videos, which was a YTPMV of the Dreamland stage from the original Super Smash Bros., usually with a character's head overlapping this iconic image of Robotnik. Some Screams Can't Be Heard, which was a common source around 2012 made by PETA trying to advocate for fish rights. Which, fun fact, apparently PETA got so annoyed that one of the tags on the original video was labeled not funny, which ironically I just find incredibly funny. And there was one of Buttercup saying no from the episode Cover Up, which was spread around the early days of YTP. Of course I found a way to slink Powerpuff Girls into this. Ronald McDonald Insanity. Ronald McDonald Insanity is a YTPMV of some Japanese McDonald's commercials, using UN was here from the Japanese game Toho. Now, edits of this caliber were out before Ronald McDonald Insanity and typically uploaded to Nico Nico Douga, which is just a Japanese alternative to YouTube, but of course Ronald McDonald Insanity being the most popular one is the most popular one. Logic. Uploaded on the 1st of January in 2008 to both Nico Nico Douga and YouTube, this video currently stands with 17 million views and thousands of different YTPMVs made after it in its honor, with even things like collabs being made for the video's 10-year anniversary. Beyond that, it has garnered a lot of attention from people that aren't weirdos with editing software, such as in 2010 when an Australian news site named PC World listed it as one of the most disturbing videos on YouTube. I guess Agamemnon Counterpart and the Saga of Dude Man are too obscure.
Can I buy this red dress?
No, honey.
It
It's kinda see-through.
Reaction channels. Like with every genre of videos on the site we call home, there are a fair chunk of people who make content of them reacting to YTPs. Some of the most famous being Charmix, who became a bit of a pseudo-star in the community before he left. The guy who reacted to Spinge Binge, and this person called Billy Bob Tanley, who screams at Michael Rosen, gets upset over ponies being in videos, screams that things aren't for kids. I don't really see why people watch this guy. But I'm a Sonic fan, so who am I to judge?
Fuck yeah!
International YTPs. Now, surprisingly, YTP isn't just exclusive to places like the US and the UK, but countries everywhere seem to have their own kind of YTPs. Some examples being YTPH, which originated in places like Spain and Latin America, YTPFR, obviously being popular in France, PLYTP, which I'm gonna assume is Polish, RYTP being from Russia, and Shinatubapaska, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which is commonly loved in Finland. Alongside that, some poopers have made a name for themselves in their respective countries. There's Studio Massa, a Dutch pooper who has since gone on to make some pretty great animations, and made a YTP of Kabuto Plop with 2 million views. Jubduck was an absolute legend until his channel was taken down in 2019, but luckily his videos have been archived. A personal favorite of mine for a while has been someone by the name of Maniac Moomin, who actually has a pretty good balance of content to entertain those who speak English and those who speak Finnish. And heck, one of my favorite videos of all time is a French YTP of Tintin, made by Capadine Sada. Stu made a really good video on this subject in his YTP news show, so I'll put a link to that in the description. Awful Fawful / Scat Rap. Ooh boy, this is an interesting one. Now, someone who goes by the name of just Jargon did a really good video on this person, so I'll keep this brief. But Fawful is one of the most prolific people in the community, with their Spinge Bill videos getting some serious fame, such as being reacted to by the likes of Etika, people posting the clip of SpongeBob and Patrick killing Mr. Krabs on Twitter, making it a bit of a meme. Although what I'd consider to be their crowning achievement in the YTP world is their poop Deliver Us, specifically the part 1 and 2 video they uploaded last year. What started as just the next YTP in Fawful's YTP career turned into a work of art that honestly just leaves you thinking about your own morality and just life in general. A pretty interesting feat considering the fact it's a SpongeBob YTP. Shurik'Scan. Shurik'Scan is probably the most annoying thing in the YTP-MV community. What started off as a pretty solid YTP-MV of The Room by user Hispanic Girasol turned into the one thing that shows up when you look up YTP-MV on the YouTube search engine. Now, apparently the story is that the Vegas file for this YTP-MV was leaked by someone within the original friend group of this person, and what followed was a cesspool of kids trying to make different versions of this YTP-MV for whatever reason. Big Beat Mario. Moving on from one of the most annoying things in the YTP-MV community, we have one of the best things to come out of the YTP-MV community. Big Beat Mario is a YTP-MV of Hotel Mario, released on the 7th of December in 2009 by Triple SSS, also known as SkyGuy16, and is one of the most beloved YTP-MVs by the community as a whole, and it's also one of the most unique YTP-MVs. Instead of just pitch-shifting samples of Hotel Mario to match that of a Mega Man or Castlevania song, it takes unedited samples of Hotel Mario and makes an original song. It's simply a spectacular YTP-MV, and its legacy lives on as well, and more recently as a part of the King for Another Day tournament that Silvagunner hosted. One of the tracks was a remixed version of Big Beat Mario, and it threw in some additional YTP references as well. Popular editors used in YTP. Now, I'm not talking about poopers here, I'm talking about the tools of the trade. There are a lot of editors, but some of the most commonly used ones are Sony Vegas and Adobe After Effects / Premiere. Some others, however, include Final Cut, iMovie, DaVinci Resolve, and probably the most controversial of these, Windows Movie Maker. Windows Movie Maker is one of the most infamous assets of YTP. Unlike most editors, Windows Movie Maker is very primitive editing-wise, and it's often linked to amateur children trying to be the next Gabachan or Walrus guy. Now granted, there have been some seriously impressive stuff done in Movie Maker. For an example, Gabachan actually got his start using a mix of Movie Maker and MS Paint, and given the software used, it holds up decently well. Plus, like every software, there has been a fair amount of plugins made for the software to make some pretty decent effects. But besides that, the software is extremely primitive and also crashes more than Vegas and After Effects combined, which is impressive. Mobro Studios. Mobro Studios is a pooper who got their start in 2011 with a YTP titled The Ed's Crazy Weekend, and from there they became one of the most prolific poopers ever. Most of you might know him for his poop Skellington's Revenge, which was a crossover YTP of SpongeBob and The Nightmare Before Christmas, with sources like Ed, Edd n Eddy, MLP, and TF2 thrown in there as well. This is actually a part of a series he had titled The Chronicles of Poop, which was a series of YTPs that would progressively be more and more story-based. Some other entries in the series being Candace opened an interdimensional portal, Squidward gets possessed by a bad lemon, and Meet the Mario Head. Currently, he stated that he's retired from making YTPs, but knowing him, he'll probably return to finish what he started. Listen, I just really want to see Alan under fire in No Ed House. Waxinator. Wrapping up the second layer, we have a pooper who was rather infamous in his day. Waxinator was a pooper known for his flash poops to sources like CDI and Beauty and the Beast. Now, he was typically loved by its fans, but he was absolutely despised by the YTP community due to the fact that people found him to be a bit arrogant due to his attitude that people with more subscribers automatically meant they had better content. He's also retired and returned like 50 times throughout the years, but as of now all of his videos are unlisted due to the whole COPPA thing.
There's only room for one song of Siva. Mine!
Robotnik rips for Silvagunner's K-Fad.
There's a little event the YouTube channel Silvagunner has held for a few years entitled KFAD, or King for Another Day.
And in 2019, during the second round of King for a Day, one of the competitors was none other than Dr. Robotnik. His source list revolved around any Sonic game or cartoon before Sonic X, the Puyo Puyo series of games, and of course classic YTP edits, typically revolving around Animation's Sexiest Fat Man. How many times am I going to say that in this video? Amazingly enough, some of the rips were actually updated versions of Robotnik YTP MVs. And there's also my personal favorite rip of all of these being a little thing called Find the Hedgehog, which was a Robotnik version of the 2008 classic Why's the Rum Gone? Unfortunately though, he didn't win the challenge, ranking 13th place overall and losing to Mr. Krabs, then outlasting Mr. Krabs and winning against the Men in Black, but eventually losing to the Rhythm Masters, making him I guess 3rd place overall, which still isn't bad, but oh well. In spite of this, Robotnik actually managed to have the most rips for the competition with a whopping 41 rips. Needless to say, the legacy of YTP was felt throughout the entire thing. The Ouija virus. One of the oldest trends for story-based YTPs that I can think of is that of the Ouija virus. Simply put, the Ouija virus is a virus in which you slowly turn into Ouija, which is taken from the PC port of the edutainment game Mario is Missing. The way one can get the Ouija virus is kinda similar to the Care Bear stare from Care Bears, except worse. I remember plot poops involving characters like Ed fighting Ouija used to be a prominent thing in the world of YTPs, but these kind of videos kind of slowed down drastically in more recent days. YouTube and YTP Mania. I put these two together because they're rather similar. YouTube was the most popular YTP related website for the longest time, sporting showrooms, forums, blogs, and so on. The website originally shut down in 2018 due to reasons I couldn't find out, and then it came back in 2020, and for reasons I probably shouldn't mention, closed down again. As of now, the main hub for the YTP community is YTP Mania. It isn't necessarily active, and I haven't been actively checking the place for like a year, but it's there. Hey, this is Post Video Chloe, and I figured I'd just say this little thing since this video has taken way too long to make. As of now, YTP Mania is down. So, as of now, the most popular forum is called Pinchbacks, and there is a Discord server that you can visit. And I'm actually somewhat active on the server. I haven't made an account on the forum. I don't know if I will or won't, but who knows. Walrus Guy. Walrus Guy is one of the most influential poopers in the community. He got his start in 2006 with his video Link Gets Cancer, and has been a very well-renowned figure in the community, making videos like Mario and Luigi Travel Through Time, his various Dr. Rabbit poops, and what I consider to be his magnum opus, Guanum's Great Adventure. Like Waxinator, he was originally semi-hated for how popular he was in the community and for his use of Flash, but since then, the hate has subsided drastically, and he's still one of the most beloved figures in the community. He's also done some work for Adult Swim, interesting enough, working for shows like Hot Streets and on the Bush World Adventure short. Nowadays, he doesn't really do that many videos, but he has shown his face a few times, such as in 2019 when he made a video based off of a CDI game that was found entitled Pyramid Adventure, and literally this year, out of nowhere, he made 4 new videos. YTP Plus. YTP Plus is a software that can make randomly generated YTPs. This was released to the public in 2019 and has since just kind of been out there. Personally, I find it to be a nice little novelty, but once that novelty wears off, there's just not much to it. No judgment to the person who made it, of course, and I fully understand that it wouldn't live up to a human-made YTP. Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon is one of the most formative poopers ever. Aside from being an OG of the community, he's been known for starting up the craze of using the Volvic ads as a source.
Am I holding a crock of shit? Tell me something. Is this hospital called St. Crock of Shit?
Actually coining the term where they smoke they pinch back and creating YTPMVs as we know it. Aside from YTPs, he's also a game developer for Traveler's Tale, being the character ringer for a lot of the LEGO games. He is also a music man, in which he took his YTPMV skills and has produced some serious bangers, such as his album Disruptor, which actually uses samples from Dexter's Lab. YTP News. YTP News was a series created by Stuart K. Riley that was pretty much the main source for YTP related info. It wasn't much of a news station considering there was a definite bias, but it didn't stop it from being an incredibly enjoyable series for nerds like me who liked learning about weird internet subcultures. The series ran until about 2018 when Stu left the community forever. Monetizing YTPs. A common question is whether or not it is possible or even ethical to monetize a YTP, considering by default it's using copyrighted material. From my experience, it is possible to monetize these videos since a good majority of poops are edited enough to be considered fair use, and even at that point, poopers have been finding ways to make money through things like Patreon and Ko-fi, which, fair enough. I mean, to me, I just find it fair game if someone's willing to put hours of work into a video for a kind of profit. The Frollo Show. The Frollo Show is a series created by Chin Chirinas, centered around Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, 2 friends who love to just mess around while getting into shenanigans, with people like Hades from Hercules, Panty and Stocking from Panty and Stocking, Tommy Wiseau from The Room, Wilford Brimley from Real Life, and just so on and so forth. Starting in 2011, the series is set apart from most YTPs for the fact that it actually has a plot. Now, you may not think so if you look through the first few episodes, but from the 6th episode onwards, a plot begins to grow until around episode 17, where things just go insane. I'd highly recommend actually watching the series for yourself. It is a class act. I mean, hey, even Doug Walker has been made aware of the series.
I can't wait to see the contest!
The 20-minute YTP challenge. Okay, I honestly just put this thing on the Iceberg to brag. The 20-minute YTP challenge was a series of videos hosted by the real Xbox nerd in his Discord server with a bunch of other people, including me. These mainly focused on Thomas the Tank Engine YTPs, but included other types of British children's shows such as Mr. Man, Fireman Sam, and Paddington, among other things. The series went on consistently throughout 2020 because there was nothing else to do that year, with a 50th round acting as a sort of series finale. As of this year, there have been 3 additional rounds in order to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, a summer special, and a Christmas special. Will there be more rounds? I don't know. Flash poops. Flash poops are a subgenre of YTPs that were typically known for keeping a more linear path and staying story-based. Some of the more popular people who have adapted this form of pooping have already been mentioned, such as Mobros, Chin, and of course Walrus Guy, who really pioneered this kind of YTP. Now, despite the name, a lot of these aren't actually done in Adobe Flash.
Some are, like the aforementioned Walrus Guy, but a lot of these are surprisingly made with Microsoft Paint, such as the next topic,
Dinner Blaster. Dinner Blaster is one of the most popular CDI poops, or just plot-based poops in general. Released in 2007 by pooper Crazy Cat, the basic plot is that after Link chucks a brick at the king goes crazy and grabs his latest weapon, the Dinner Blaster, and starts firing. This leads to a lot of events, like Link exercising, Scatman John showing up, the king revealing he has a vast arsenal of weapons for ultimate dinner destruction, Guanum looking for his dino time, except not really since Guanum's Great Adventure hasn't happened yet, and things just go completely bonkers. This poop is insanely popular and has spawned several sequels from different poopers that vary in quality. Besides that, the king has become synonymous with his Dinner Blaster. Cheesy Art. Cheesy Art was pretty much DeviantArt for furries and is the website in which Super Yoshi uploaded the original YTP. There isn't really much to say. Veg replacements. A veg replacement is what happens when someone takes a file and replaces the main source with something else, resulting in something absolutely magical. This is typically done in Vegas, hence the name, but it isn't exclusive to Vegas. Any editor that can let you switch out a source can allow you to do this. This topic can also refer to videos like The Epicness of Flippy, which was a video in which the Vegas file was put somewhere and spammed everywhere in a fashion similar to Pshurk Scan. YTP Jam. A YTP Jam is a rather recent product of the community in which a pooper starts a poop and then another pooper continues on and the pattern repeats. From what I can find, the first one was a video named Mario Gets Wario Killed by L-Time, but the main one I can think of is a video called It's a Volcano, a Little Volcano to be precise, by Nisak Karasame, which by the way, go sub to them, their stuff is next level. This is relatively new, but it's something I can see going far in the community. Edited videos. An edited video is probably one of the most simplistic yet amusing kind of videos out there. I'm assuming you've seen videos like Drake and Josh the Bet edited or Krusty Towers edited, but in case you haven't, the basic gist is this. An edited video is when someone takes an episode of a show, most notably SpongeBob, and replaces a bunch of the words in a sentence with other, usually profane language to form a sentence.
Oh yeah. What up, bitch? You look like shit.
While I don't tend to watch these kind of videos an awful lot, I can definitely see the appeal in these. YTP versus MLG. During the mid-2010s, a semi-popular debate between niche communities was debating on whether YTP or MLG is the superior form of video editing. For those who don't know what MLG is, just look at this. Yeah, peak internet humor right there. I distinctly remember people being like, YTP is old news, MLG is here to stay! And as you can see, that aged really well. It got to the point where this one channel named Animation Rewind made this series of videos in which YTP characters led by Ouija for some reason, and MLG characters led by Sanic fought to death. The internet is a weird place. Trendy sources. A trendy source, or fad source, is typically a source that explodes in popularity and then slowly fizzles out as time goes by. There have been numerous examples of this, but some I can think of include My Little Pony back in 2011, Phil Swift from 2019, and especially Frozen YTPs in 2013. While a lot of these sources fizzle out over time, some trendy sources stay consistently used among poopers, such as JonTron, who has stayed very consistent, and do I even need to mention Michael Rosen?
No!
Copyright issues. In all honesty, I probably should have put this higher on the iceberg due to how notorious this is, but it's too late now. So as you know, a YTP typically uses copyrighted material, and oftentimes copyright holders can take a video down. Some of the most infamous being Viacom, with them constantly taking down SpongeBob poops. But there's also Fox with Simpsons poops, and if you want to go old school, there was a time Colgate was taking down Dr. Rabbit poops left and right. And I vaguely remember hearing about a company called The Orchard taking down Adventures of Sonic poops back in the day. Luckily these days you don't need to worry about copyright taking down your Sonic and Dr. Rabbit poops, but SpongeBob is still a high risk. The unspoken rules of YTP.
While yes, YTPs are chaotic in nature, there are certain rules to them.
Some include not using your voice in a poob, not recording anything off of a TV, and trying to avoid MS Paint style paint jobs. There are others, but these are some of the most common.
Yeah! I can wait to use it.
I somehow forgot to mention YTP in V-Soccer despite putting it on the iceberg. So to keep it brief, YTP and V-Soccer is basically the YTP and V equivalent of a YTP tennis. Okay, moving on.
Mark Gray. Mark Gray is an American actor. He has provided roles for stuff like Ratchet & Clank and the Spyro Reignited trilogy, and oddly enough, the 2D adaptation of the Larry Boy cartoon. He's, however, most known for being the VA of Mario and Luigi in Hotel Mario. He also, amazingly enough, did that creepy Bowser's laugh! In 2015, he did an interview where he talked about it a bit, and I'd highly recommend giving it a watch. May 8, 2009 thumbnail hack. May AIDS was a notorious pooper, and in his day, his channel would constantly get taken down to the point where it was a bit of a joke within the community. He was also a well-known troll within the community, and probably his most infamous act being the thumbnail hack of 2009, in which May somehow managed to hack the thumbnails of channels like Fred and Shane Dawson, in which he changed the thumbnails to be Sanrio's My Sweet Piano. Honestly, kinda based. Lemon made a great video on this subject, so I'd recommend checking that out. The War on AIDS. This is probably going to sound weird out of context. Okay, so an old name for YTPs using sources like Zelda CDI and Super Mario World were called AIDS for the fact that a lot of them were still stuck in 2006. Eventually, this would lead to the term Aidless AIDS, in which there would be poops of these old sources that are more representative of the current standards of YTP, and of course, eventually a sort of backlash would occur due to this, and thus the War on AIDS occurred. Of course, this wasn't an actual war, but even today there's still a little bit of a stigma for Spittinner, but as I've said before, it has calmed down drastically. David Bailey. David Bailey is a professor at Georgia Southern University who became an interesting figure in the community during 2010 when he made a video praising them and proposing the idea of getting YTPs in the mainstream and showing them off to other professors. And then they did. Originally, this was going to be a live conference, but eventually was decided to be a tele-communal deal. The conference was called Remix Rat in the age of the culture hacker, which, by the by, the term culture hacker sounds like 2 times cooler than YouTube poop. This was met with mixed reviews from the community, with some stating he did a great job, but others stating he didn't represent the community well. After that, he tried getting the name out through some gaming magazine called Killscreen, but hasn't been involved in the community since then. YTP rants. Throughout the years, there have been several people who have liked YTPs. There have also been people who have disliked YTPs. And then there are people who dislike them so much that they decide to make videos venting their frustrations about it. A lot of these were made in the early days, and admittedly, a lot of these were terrible attempts at trolling, and because they were schmucks and they decided to go up with the YTP community decided to turn the people ranting on YTPs into YTPs themselves, or just trolled them. That works too.
I just watched one, and like, how about a spaghetti for dinner? A spaghetti?
Oh, I think I see where this is going.
You mean some spaghetti?
Did you just try to correct the grammar of a sentence mix? What kind of monster are you?
Honestly, ranting about something like Luigi saying a swear isn't necessarily something the modern world is that worried about. YTF. A YTF is basically an audio-only YTP. Audio-only YTPs have existed for a while, of course, but it wasn't until late 2017, early 2018 when pooper Jimmy Davis coined the term, and even hosted a collab centered around the idea. There haven't been a whole lot of YTFs since then, but anything can happen in the YTP world. Mobile editors. For the longest time, some of the most hated people in the community have been those who have used editors found on a mobile phone. This is mainly due in part to the fact that a mobile editor isn't exactly up to snuff as something like Vegas or Premiere. That being said, there are some people who have made some seriously impressive stuff through a mobile phone. One person in particular that I can think of is a small pooper named Schmoopytron, who recently made a spectacular Hotel Mario YTP using a mobile phone somehow. And he apparently made it in only 2 weeks. Jesus Christ, I wish I had that kind of work ethic. CDI Random Battle / CDI Fan Animations. I put these two together because they're more or less the same thing. CDI Random Battle is a duology made by Gloin 1994, in which Mario, Morshu, and the King fight Luigi, Ganon, and Link. The first one was made in 2012, and could honestly still hold up when compared to today's standards. The second one, made in 2020, is just grand. As for CDI fan animations, some of the immediate examples I can think of are the Zelda CDI reanimated collab and the King's Birthday by Samination, and Sweaty Luigi by Lumpy Torch.
Don't let him jump scare you. Jump scare incoming.
YTP is art. Ooh, this one's gonna be controversial. It is heavily debated on whether or not YTP is an art form. Several people outside of the community have claimed that it's art, and in which the community will say that's just a bunch of nerds messing with cartoons. People have even got on to David Bailey with this, but what do I think? Personally, I consider it a form of art. I mean, with people like Chincharinas and Our Poop making some simply beautiful stuff, and then there's people like MP Carlson and Mobros who make simply grand stories and just proves everything. And not to mention people like Original Name and Aliantos, whose content can simply be eerie. And do I even need to mention Deliverus by Fawful? Especially considering I did that like 2 layers ago. YTP Sexer. YTP Sexer is an ironic YTP made by Spicaton, using footage from Toy Story and a bunch of other stuff. In all honesty, I'd never found this funny. Like, I get that it's supposed to be ironic, but it just isn't funny at all. Like, it feels like something on the scale of what several poopers do on April Fool's Day, when they just make an intentionally bad YTP to prank the viewer. However, for some reason, this thing went everywhere, and even an over 2-hour-long collab happened. I honestly don't have much to say on this because it's just, in my opinion, not a funny video, and I really don't understand why so many poopers gravitated towards this. Radical Faith 360. Radical Faith 360 isn't just another pooper. He is in fact an actor who has acted out several YTPs. He mainly does stuff by CS188, who, upon reflection, I probably should have put somewhere on the iceberg, but oh well. I remember first running into his reenactment of the Garfield video, oddly enough, which was actually edited by CS himself, so isn't that a nice little fun fact? Aside from CS, he has also reenacted videos by The Thing, Spark 3611, and Poops for the World. Genuinely one of the coolest things on the iceberg, I'm not gonna lie. YTP on Fox News. In 2018, Fox 6, a subsidiary of Fox News, made a little segment about keeping kids safe on the internet. This was in the midst of the whole Elsagate controversy, but what's interesting is that they mentioned that people need to avoid YTPs, calling them evil.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate that those evil YouTube videos exist.
The community did not let this go unnoticed, and it became a bit of a pseudo-fad. YTPs being shown at film festivals. Considering YTPs can technically classify as short films, it probably would be no surprise that someone would have tried to submit one of their YTPs to a film festival. I mean, who wouldn't want to show the king saying, "My boy," in front of an audience? And in fact, there have been people who have been so brave as to do so. The main one I can think of is Fish Titan 64, who submitted 2 of her YTPs, one being an Alex Jones YTP, and of course with this being Fish Titan 64, a Blue's Clues YTP. She actually uploaded the video of the showing, and it's just a really interesting piece of history. Scare to Poop. A Scare to Poop is rather self-explanatory. Make YTP, but instead of making it comedic, they make it scary. Probably the most famous example of this is the Slendy Bob series by A Knight's Night, which probably could have made for an entry within itself, but shush. These aren't necessarily my cup of tea, because as far as being a horror-loving goth girl,
I was just in this for the fashion!
But it's still cool to see something that isn't exactly made for laughs.
You're just in time. I baked a fresh batch of gingerbread men.
Frying Dory / The Downward Spiral. Frying Dory is a bit of a running gag Emplem had on his channel after the release of his Frying Nemo saga videos ended, in which a bunch of children desperately wanted him to make a YTP of the Pixar film Finding Dory, hence the name Frying Dory. This would eventually lead to his Downward Spiral, which is still a recurring thing in his content to this day, despite him moving away from YTPs, it's kinda cool. The phrase downward spiral has been mentioned commonly throughout the community, with some people, most notably Goop Videos, doing their own variations on the downward spiral. YouTube Poop games. There have been several games made that tried to take the characters of YTPs and make games out of them. Most of these are RPGs you can find on Game Jolt, but there have also been a bunch of games on Scratch, and more recently there has been a mod for the game Friday Night Funkin', in which characters like Ouija and the King are fighting this little schmuck.
Those are Sonic's favorite clothes, so don't blame me if he gets mad at you.
Yeah, I didn't say they were on the levels of Metal Gear Solid or Castlevania, but they're there. Michael Rosen was originally against YTPs. During the genesis of Rosen Poops, Rosen actually noticed that his videos were being remixed in various ways, and to make a long story short, he didn't approve. Which, in fairness, is kinda fair enough. I mean, if I were a children's poet and saw some of the things, especially in the early days of Rosen Poops, that I was being made to say, I'd have questions as well. Eventually, Rosen tried to strike down and flag all the YTPs using him, which also understandably caused a bit of backlash from the community, making Rosen a hated figure among the community. Shortly after, though, Rosen realized his mistakes and stopped trying to flag down the videos.
Hi, Poopers! It's so wonderful what you've done with all my YouTube performances. I'm so grateful to you. It's been so wonderful to see my face turned into, and all those words chopped up. I love you, Poopers. I love you. He loves you.
Although this got some backlash from parents, Rosen's response was that if kids couldn't understand a YTP, then they shouldn't be allowed on the internet, ensuring that Rosen would be a king in the world of YTP. YTPers editing for big YouTubers. Something I've noticed is that ex-poopers will oftentimes translate their skills from editing and apply it to serious jobs, such as, fittingly enough, video editing. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 examples being Biodegradable, who I've seen edit for a few of the Right Opinions videos, and a good amount of poopers who worked for Schaefer's Productions, such as Goop Videos, Shooting Films, and
X-Katana.
And probably most famously number 1 and his job working for MadPat on Game Theory. I'm just happy to see that these people are actually able to make a fairly decent living on what was originally just editing cartoons together in a humorous fashion. Pyramid Adventure and Zelda's Adventure. I put these two together because they're kind of the same thing. Pyramid Adventure is a game for the CDI that was either lost or unreleased, that has a lot of the same blood as the Zelda CDI games, right down to the fact that the main character of the game, Dash Daniels, is done by the same VA as Link in the games.
You can say that again onto the...
Whereas Zelda's Adventure is a Zelda CDI title, but instead of using the art style of the previous 2 games, it goes for something the likes of Night Trap or Mad Dog McCree.
You missed that one. Try another.
While Pyramid Adventure saw a few poops, and even Walrus Guy made one for the occasion, Zelda's Adventure has seldom seen a poop to its name. Off the top of my head, I only remember seeing like 1, but I couldn't tell you who made it. YTP-esque traits found in other media. There have been a lot of shows and movies, and there have been a lot of YTPs. So naturally, either by design or what is usually the case by coincidence, there have been some semblance of YTP traits found in media. One I want to highlight in particular is Adventure Time, which had an episode titled King Worm, which used a bunch of poopisms in the episode. The creator actually stated that they were inspired by YTPs. Another thing that comes to mind is this one guy named Martin Arnold, who in the 90s made a bunch of YTP-esque videos out of old black and white movies. Equestrian Carnival. Equestrian Carnival is a channel that, like the majority of stuff on here, made YouTube poop related content. But if you look at his channel, it may seem a bit familiar. And that is because the person was actually Mobros on another account. Not exactly sure why he made a new account, especially considering later on he would just go back to the Mobros channel. But if anyone has any info on this, please let me know. Additionally, I'd like to highlight another account he made called Clockwork Reaper, in which he would read creepypastas. The best one obviously being the Doraemon one. Breakbeat music. Breakbeat Music, or as it was previously known as Raffle Tracks, was a music label created by Mr. Simon in 2008. This would be a home for various YTP creators such as the aforementioned Mr. Simon, McMango, Shroomhead1, and someone I'm sure you might recognize, Glue70. Yep, that Glue70. The same Glue70 that had that song that was part of the whole "You Were Posted in the Wrong Neighborhood" meme. That was also the intro for Luffy's channel. Yeah, that one. It was mainly centered around electronic music, made just for the sake of making music. They released a few albums before eventually closing its doors in 2014.
YTP the movie.
A common thing that people have been trying to make is a YTP movie, or just a really long YTP in general. There hasn't been an exact YTP movie per se, aside from one labeled as such, and it's just a collection of YTPs from various poopers, but there have been poops and especially collabs that are movie length. And of course there's Gava-chan, who specializes in making videos that tend to go on for sometimes 20 to 30 minutes. Kevin T. Ackerman's Poops of the Month. Ooh boy, this one's an old one. Kevin T. Ackerman was a person who had a little, we'll call it a series titled YouTube Poop Top 10 Monthly Moments, in which he would count down his picks for the top 10 poops of whatever given month it was. This was met with a mixed reception from the community, with some people claiming it made YTP seem like a bit of a challenge that needed to be won, while others just thought it lacked variety.
Today is Kevin T. Ackerman's Top 10 YTPs of the Month.
SpongeBob, don't you know that award is a scam?
What do you mean?
It makes people work harder to get on the list.
That is not true, Squidward. I get on the list because I work harder.
In 2013, Kevin would stop making the series and pass the torch to Stuart K. Riley. Stu's reign was short-lived due to his version not being received well, so it was passed on to Pilly 10, who then stepped down after feeling uncomfortable with the position they were put at. And soon after that, Spaghetti Bicycle, who was already running a series similar, took over the project before eventually videos stopped being posted on the channel. After that, it was pretty much dormant and has remained that way. However, near the end of YouTube's lifespan, user CapPan6 gave the community an interesting piece of information. This being that he was the mastermind behind the account the entire time. His reason for doing so was simply that considering he was already doing a top 100 poops of 2008, he didn't want the videos to contradict anything.
The ultimate YouTube poop.
You know the Turka and Walrus. Guy, we own YouTube. Let's make fun of people whose videos don't have thousands of views.
Enthalpy. Enthalpy is a web series created by Walrus Guy. It originated as a form of comic in 2001 before being uploaded to Newgrounds in 2005. He also made a few games with the characters from the comic, and he even made a website for it. Honestly, don't really have much to say here, I just thought it was a cool thing to add. Speaking of cool, while looking for this, I found out that Walrus Guy was responsible for this animation.
Hey, Mario.
Hey, Paisan!
Sorry, my fault. I was playing with the gun. Stupid of me. Hope I didn't break anything.
General Adolf Takes Over. General Adolf Takes Over is a piece of anti-Nazi propaganda made by the British Ministry of Information in the 1940s to paint the Nazis as goofy. This piece of propaganda is referred to as probably the most clever form of propaganda, making the Nazis move back and forward to an upbeat, beat. Can I even talk about this? Regardless, it holds an interesting piece in both film history and in terms of YTP. It's referred to as some of the earliest traces of YTP. Operation Introduction. On a hopefully not being demonetized note, Operation Introduction was an experiment held by pooper Telstar Logistics in which he tried to introduce people to the world of YTP. They conducted the experiment using 10 YTP and YTP-MVs, from people like Absolute Billion and The Things to people like Mr. Tenek and Do. This was met with a mixed reception from the test audiences, with some people loving the videos shown and other people hating it. In the end, people like The Things and Waxnator reigned supreme, and people like Mr. Tenek and Do ranked the opposite of supreme. Telstar was originally gonna make a second one, but he has apparently disappeared from the internet, so we'll probably never get that video. Vor Unbirth Dinner. Aside from the not ad-friendly things I found researching this, Vor Unbirthed Dinner is a tennis round made by tennisser Jolton, but this isn't your average tennis round, because this little video is 6 hours long, making it, to my knowledge, the longest YTP ever created. I'm just wondering how long it took to render. The Perfect Poop Challenge. The Perfect Poop Challenge was a contest hosted on YouTube in 2008, where people would submit YTPs, and whatever YTP had the most views by April of that year would win. There were many people who submitted to this, but to the surprise of no one at the time, the winner ended up being none other than Walrus Guy, which led to a bit of a controversy. This was probably due to his popularity, because even as someone who enjoys Walrus Guy's content, I'll be the first to say it wasn't his best video. All the entries were posted on the YouTube channel at the time, but due to its suspension in 2011, it's a bit hard to track down some of these entries. Except for Walrus Guys, of course. Fawful's Twitter. I'm gonna keep this one brief because it's a bit on the drama side, but for the longest time, Awful Fawful had a Twitter account directed towards their Fawful moniker. And a lot of the stuff on there was kinda yikes-worthy. Most notably, they were seen retweeting things relating to white supremacy. Yeah, I know YTP has its out there jokes, but yeah. YTP is being mentioned in a university context. In all honesty, I probably could have put this higher on the iceberg, but I figured it would be a fun break between some of the more scarier entries down below. We've already mentioned David Bailey, who is a professor at the University of Georgia, who talked about YTPs, but since then there have been a few more examples of universities mentioning YTP, or just higher level things mentioning YTPs. For example, a professor at Harvard Law, of all places, compared it to a sort of call and response, or this one, I'm assuming, student at Yale made an essay about YTP that you can actually view. There have also been a few court cases in which YTPs have been mentioned, like this one that happened in the UK in which YTP adjacent person Cassette Boy was mentioned for his video about David Cameron.
I'm not saying it's not funny. It is for me. I've got loads of money.
Best of YouTube Poop DVD. The Best of YouTube Poop, otherwise known as They Pinch Back, was a proposed DVD/Blu-ray set of what else? YouTube Poop. This idea was proposed by Dopley, who would compile over 250 YTPs and YTP-MVs from, at the time of 2012, every kind of generation of YTP for the DVD. They also had ideas of including special features which would be exclusive to the DVD. Unfortunately, this DVD would never see the light of day, although the list is out there, so if you desire to make this yourself, then you're more than welcome to. A YTP is dead. A common thing you'll see in the comment section of modern YTP is people saying that they miss the days of old YTP, or that they're a thing of the past. This notion seems to be a bit popular, but it's been something that has been around since, I'd argue, 2011, when people were saying that people like Walrus Guy and Waxnator were the only things keeping YTP alive. It has also been, in my opinion, highly inaccurate since 2011. Every time, at least to me it seems, that YTP has lost its magic, someone new walks in and simply blows us all away. Personally, I think that as long as there's people editing, there will be a YTP. Freedom Planet. Freedom Planet, not to be confused with a location from the Sonic OVA, was an alternative to YouTube back in the day due to some drama on the forums. There is actually a very long history surrounding the forum, but to keep it brief, after someone was made a mod on YouTube as a joke, everything began to deteriorate from there. Eventually, negotiations were made between Conrad Slater, the person who ran YouTube at the time, and There's No Spoon 303, person running Freedom Planet, in which either YouTube would go down and Freedom Planet would be the new hub for the YTP community, or the people of Freedom Planet would become part of the YouTube staff. Eventually, YouTube would reign supreme, but a lot of the features of Freedom Planet became part of YouTube, so at least it left a mark on the community. Walrus Guy went to court because of Dr. Rabbit. Ooh, this is a fun one. For those who don't know, Dr. Rabbit was the mascot for the company Colgate during the late 90s and early 2000s. Actually, I'll let him do the honors.
Hello there! I am Dr. Rabbit, the world's only rabbit dentist.
During 2008, Colgate was oddly protective of the Dr. Rabbit property and would actively take down any Dr. Rabbit content, which would, of course, include YouTube poops. Yes, not even the God Rabbit saga was safe from this purge. And who else would be affected by this other than Walrus Guy? Walrus Guy actually got suspended due to his Dr. Rabbit poops, but this would end up being a lot worse for him, as he actually ended up going to court because of his Dr. Rabbit poops. is what I would be saying if it was true. This was nothing more than a work of fiction Walrus Guy thought up one day as a sort of an interesting story, as he would relay on an episode of Rebel Taxi's Pizza Party podcast.
People thought that I was taken to court after I brought this up, and so, I just sort of went along with it. Like I said, yeah, they took me to court and they had to watch my YouTube poops in court, and because that was sort of a fantasy for me, like the idea of a jury having to, like these random adults who are called to jury duty have to watch this Dr. Rabbit YouTube poop and decide on whether it was illegal or not.
Damn, so it was all a fraud.
I want to believe.
This was all a lie.
Leave it to Walrus Guy to leave a legacy like this. But enough of that as we move on to layer 7. Emplemon caused Behind the Meme's downfall. This is more speculation if anything, but if you know the whole story behind the Meme, you know that Emplemon made a 30+ minute video about him and how terrible his content was, which would eventually lead to Behind the Meme's whole S-word arc. Now, of course, saying Emplemon single-handedly destroyed Behind the Meme is a ridiculous claim, but it's definitely safe to say that it was a major factor of what ended up happening to Behind the Meme. Who coined the name YTP? Ah, yes, a question as old as time. Who originally coined the phrase YouTube poop? People might say it was Super Yoshi because he started YTP as a whole. Less people might think it's Mr. Simon because he coined a lot of stuff and was just an influential part of YTP's formative years. And some might say it's someone like Walrus Guy, or even someone like David Bailey, for some reason. All of these are wrong, however, because the person who coined the phrase YTP was someone you'd probably not expect. This is mainly because the person's internet footprint is almost gone. The person who coined the phrase was a pooper named Duke of Fortune Man, who also was apparently the first person to use the Zelda CDI games as a source. Unfortunately, as I said before, most of the videos by Duke of Fortune Man have been lost to time, but according to Super Yoshi, and an old episode of YouTube Poop News, this was the earliest trace of the term YouTube Poop. The first YouTube Poop collab. I put this one right next to the first time a video was called a YTP because it's in some ways similar. As far back as my research can answer, the first YTP collab was done by Super Yoshi and his pal Super Jape. A lot of supers. The video was titled Dr. Light's Guidance System Show, and it used the Mega Man cartoon. While very simplistic by modern YTP standards, as for most of the early stuff from the world of YTP, let's be honest, it's still a pivotal point in YTP history. Another quick fun fact I'd like to mention is that RetroJape was actually the first person to use Mama Luigi as a YTP source, and thankfully you can find this video today. The video is titled Super Jario Brothers, and I won't lie, it's still fairly funny to this day. NSFW YTPs/collabs. I'm gonna keep this brief for obvious reasons. Now, I'm not talking about YTPs with gratuitous amounts of sex jokes, because if that were the case, then this wouldn't be on this layer of the iceberg. I'm talking about YTPs that use NSFW sources. I'm mainly going off of memory for this because I'm not looking this up. But I remember someone named Shruck trying to make a porn collab, and I've heard a very popular YTP movie source is, to put it lightly, live action yaoi. Let's move on, please. Who voiced Morshu? Another great mystery of YTP was who voiced Morshu. Now, in the time it took me to write the script and record this, YouTuber wavywebsurf made a spectacular video on the subject, so go check that out if you want a more in-depth look on the subject. But to keep it brief, it was believed that Jeffrey Nelson, who voiced Militon, otherwise known as this creature from Faces of Evil, was the one who voiced Morshu, but it's debatable if that's the case. Again, go check out wavywebsurf's video for a more in-depth look on the subject. This iceberg is long enough. Lost YTPs. As with a lot of genres of videos on this website, a lot of YTPs have unfortunately been lost to time. For example, a lot of my really old YTPs have been lost to time, and I don't even have access to them because I was a really smart girl and deleted the Vegas files and MP4 files on my old computer. But beyond my stupidity, videos will end up being lost due to copyright, or people just simply deleting the videos over time because they might be embarrassed by them. Some YTPs I remember watching, but are lost to time, are a bunch of these really dinner-heavy VeggieTales YTPs, and an extremely trippy I Am Mean YTP. If you have specific memories of YTPs, please tell me in the comments. I'd love to learn about some of them. No, this isn't just me being desperate for comments. YTP as a form of therapy. A YTP in nature is something that someone can use as a hobby, but much like music or art, it can be debated that YTP can be used to vent frustrations in a form of mostly harmless art. What frustrations can be solved with making SpongeBob swear is beyond me, but hey, I feel better whenever I edit a bit in a YTP, so it must work somehow. Trudermark and next underscore. Before I go more in depth on this topic, I wanted to warn you that I'm going to be mentioning some very upsetting things. If you want to skip this part, I don't blame you at all. Feel free to skip to this point in the video if need be. I put these two together because they're about the same subject-wise. Trudermark was a once well-respected member of the YTP community, in which he was famous for his videos about SpongeBob and the Amazing World of Gumball. However, in 2020, Trudermark made a post on his Twitter outing himself on some things he's done. In particular, those include him assaulting a girl who rejected some of his advances.
He also had some interactions with minors. I'm assuming you can connect the dots from there.
Next underscore was a well-respected member in the YTPMV community, famous for his YTPMVs of the Jack Black Octagon segment of Sesame Street and the anime Kill Me Baby. In 2019, he was caught with something that I'm not exactly comfortable mentioning on his computer, and a lot of it apparently. YTPer, the rEactor, made a few videos on these two people, so if you're interested in looking into the subject any further, feel free to go there. The Walrus Guy and Waxnator hate from the 2010s. Now, admittedly, I could have put this a bit higher on the iceberg, but again, after something like that, I needed something a little bit more lighthearted. During the early 2010s years of YTPs, Waxnator and Walrus Guy were some of the most hated people in the YTP community. I've already pretty much mentioned why they were hated back then due to them being overrated. Actually, going back to the Perfect Poop contest entry, Walrus Guy winning the aforementioned contest actually spewed a bit of a controversy due to how popular he was. And in the case of Waxnator, watching a few Gabachan videos has made me realize how much he hated Waxnator.
Picking on a bad move, turn over and over. Don't you bots get tired? Yeah, Hedgehog, but Gabachan's gonna keep at it. So his fans said the lesson. Maybe by that time he'll yell so much he'll lost his voice. You got it now? Gabachan hates Waxnator. Granted, nowadays the hate for both of them has slowed down dramatically, and now both of them are well-regarded members of the YTP community. He's on Club SpongeBob. This is a supposed lost SpongeBob YTP of what I can imagine is of the classic SpongeBob episode, Club SpongeBob, made by someone named Coolicking. In this particular poop, it was apparently one of the worst YTPs in terms of content. But the thing is, we don't know if this video even existed. The only trace of the video's existence is a DA post in which someone reviews it in the style similar of Mr. Enter's DA post, in which a photo of this particular video isn't provided, making it even harder to track this down. What doesn't help is that the user Coolicking has seemed to disappear off the face of the earth. The only other thing that can be found is a script from a different YTP of theirs titled The Mouth Doctor, which is genuinely so messed up I couldn't even get past the first paragraph of it. The rows have teeth in the mouth of the beast. This one is still a complete mystery to me, but from what I could gather, this is a quote that pooper Matt Anonymous has on the About page of their channel. But what does it mean? Well, I simply don't know. From what I can gather, it's a quote spawning from the 6th studio album by the band called Matmos, but beyond that, I have no clue. But this particular quote just adds to the mysterious aura Matt Anonymous has. I am the beast! YTPs are what dreams are made of. I mean, who's to say that YTPs aren't just what we think of when we're in our most vegetative state? I mean, it probably helps that some of the stuff in YTPs connect as a sort of representation of fever dreams, such as stuff like the YTP movie Night at the Princess by Jimmy Davis, or the aforementioned Matt Anonymous video. We're living in a YTP. In the kind of world we're living in currently, sometimes it feels like the world is just full of madness, and it wouldn't be surprising if someone is just controlling us. Every YTP is personalized. I mean, everyone has their own style for making YTP, so obviously everything is going to be a bit different from each other. Ouija is right behind you.
Watch out. Okay, the last few were done for a sort of meme, or just something that sounded smart, but hopefully I don't sound too insane. Well, except for the Ouija bit. But regardless, that is the YTP Iceberg. I hope you found this video interesting. I honestly love making these kind of videos, so if you have any suggestions for more topics for these kind of videos, please tell me. I'd love to hear them. Well, I'm gonna head out now. It's currently 6 a.m. as of me writing this, and I haven't slept in a while, and I've been recording for 2 hours, so I'm gonna go do that sleeping thing. I heard it's very much loved.
Use the mirror!
What happened?
No!